So without further ado, let's get into it. Today's topic is on scaling the sales tech stack. My name is Sara Archer, and I am the VP of Sales at ChartMogul. We are a B2B SaaS analytics platform and CRM, loved and used by thousands of subscription businesses globally. I have served in the revenue, operations, sales operations capacity, and I work together closely with our revenue operations team here at ChartMogul. And so I'm really excited to get into this topic. We've prepared some questions, and I'm happy to take some from the chat as well. But before we do that, I'd ask our participants to introduce themselves. So, Jonah, maybe tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure. Really pumped to be here. My name is Jonah. I'm the VP of Sales at Capchase, VP of Sales and Customer Success. We are a revenue-based financing provider. We essentially help SaaS businesses grow more efficiently through growth capital or our newly launched product, which is a buy now, pay later solution. Most of my career I've spent in tech sales, go-to-market roles, spent 5 years at Alibaba, and then 6 years working in the mobile payment space, working at both Square and ShopKeep.
All right, Dani, tell us a bit about what brings you here.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Sara. I am the head of operations at Accord. We are a customer collaboration platform, so a spot where buyers and sellers can kind of work on a deal together, share resources, create a business case. My background is in revenue operations. I led teams at Carta and Stripe before that, and really excited to just dig into the do's and don'ts and, things maybe people haven't thought of when building out their tech stack. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. And Graham, if you'd be kind enough to round us out.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me as well. I've been a startup guy for a long time, went through Techstars and sold a company. I was the head of marketing at Patreon. A bunch of stuff, but took that and sort of transitioned into a business called Segment, which is owned by Twilio. And I am the head of the startup program there. And so I work with our sales team to sort of have these startups that are coming through upsell and educate them and things like that. I've also just worked with a lot of new companies on their tech stack generally, both sort of MarTech and sales and things like that. That's me.
Grand. Well, I'm pleased that we have such an esteemed panel. Folks have different experience from, small businesses all the way up to larger businesses. And it's cool that we're, in background from sales, marketing, customer success, and ops. And so we've all had our hands in technology that is a part of enabling commercial teams to do their job effectively, and some technology more so than others, perhaps, as we get into things here. The purpose of today's webinar is to really source some expert opinions and stories from this esteemed panel around exactly that, the tech stack that takes you to that next ARR milestone. And so I've prepared a few questions that we'll discuss. And just to start it out, I guess, Jonah, this is a broad one, but talk to me about what advice you have for early stage startups. Where should they begin with their tech stack? At ChartMogul, we work with lots of businesses who are trying to figure out, when should I install a CRM? How should I bill my customers? So when you're talking to, baby businesses, if you will, how should they think about getting started with sales tech?
Yeah, I think the first part here, and I've made this mistake plenty of times, is we should all understand the purpose of tech and the tech stack. It's to streamline and optimize our operations. The amount of companies I've been a part of where we spend a majority of our time talking about the tech stack, in reality, the purpose of the tech stack is to save time and, again, streamline operations. So I think for early stage businesses, make sure you're not losing sight of the purpose of the overall tech stack, right? So I'd say that is one. The other point of advice here that I'd have for early stage businesses is keep it simple. When I started at Alibaba, they did not have a go-to-market team in the States. There was no CRM. Things were being run out of an Excel file. And pretty much everyone pushed me to sign up for Salesforce. And my first thought was, why not use an out-of-the-box solution that doesn't require an army to operate, where a lot of the tools are native and direct integration. So I would say my overarching advice here for early stage businesses is don't lose sight as to the purpose of the tech stack and how it's supposed to be there to help save time. Try to avoid that trap of always signing up for the new shiny object or structuring meetings around, signing up for a new tool. I would say keep it simple. And I think that would be my overall advice there for early stage businesses.
Yeah, fair enough. Like when I started my sales career, my various email templates, like I never had Sales Loft or Outreach. Like my various email templates were actually just signatures in my email client. And then I would go through and I would like customize them all like one by one. So you can like go a pretty long way with pretty rudimentary tech or process, right? Graham, you've got some interesting like marketing experience, and we're seeing lots of businesses do different things to generate tons of demand through like wait lists and newsletters. When you're accruing a lot of demand or a lot of leads, as an early stage, software startup, what kinds of considerations do you have to handle, these volumes of data and given their importance?
In terms of tech stack?
Yeah, imagine you're like you're generating like thousands of webinar signups, and you can't necessarily put these into an Excel sheet, or if so, like you'll outstrip it very quickly. So on the marketing side, like where does your head start in advising early stage startups?
Yeah, I guess I usually start from like a channel perspective, right? Where we're sort of like, okay, web, they're coming from the web. They're arriving on some landing page or your website. Who's controlling the marketing website? Are they using some kind of CMS to do this? For example, at Segment, we use Contentful, but I wouldn't recommend using that for a smaller company. It's headless, and you want something starting out that's just a little more like point and click, like Instapage or Unbounce or something like that. So that's kind of where I'd start. I just mapping the customer journey, each step of it, and just making sure that there's something there to do everything you need to do, like follow up with people via email after X event happens, So like, I would say that like, Zoom is sufficient for like webinars specifically, but there are other maybe less expensive sort of things. I wouldn't run a webinar in Google Meet, but I would say that sort of like landing page functionality, especially one where you don't need a designer and you just take all of your pre-made design assets and put it in there and then sort of like let people assemble them as they will. Is definitely the first. Email is the second. I would stay away from Marketo as long as possible. Maybe this is like Jonah's sort of like Salesforce thing. I'm just sort of like, everyone uses it because everyone's always used it because you used it at your last job. And that is sort of like how it works and how it gets its tendrils in. But like, to be honest, like something like Customer IO is inexpensive relative to its power, fully scalable. If you want to start sending push notifications or text messages or whatever, you can do that. You can connect it to your analytics infrastructure like Segment so that any event that happens can trigger some action. And so between sort of, a content CMS like Instapage or Unbounce and a sort of like an email engine like a Customer IO, like a lot of the marketing use cases are pretty covered there.
Yeah. Interesting. So it sounds like, regardless of discipline, sales success or marketing, making sure that you're employing like pretty lightweight tech from an admin perspective, just drawing some parallels between what Jonah said about Salesforce and what you said about Contentful. And that sort of makes me smile because when I started at ChartMogul like nearly 5 years ago, Nick, our CEO, said on my second day, don't you want to implement Salesforce? And I have a Salesforce consulting background. And I said, sure, yeah. I just like budget for a Salesforce admin and probably a consultancy to help me get set up. And so that's a fun debate. Dani, I don't know if you want to weigh in. There's like lots of different schools of thought around, should you go this ecosystem approach and adopt something like HubSpot, or, Salesforce, which is a really mature, integration landscape, or, should you look for something that's more suitable to your requirements? How do you think about that, based on your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I was Salesforce like through and through for all of my career before getting to Accord. We started Accord 3 years ago, and it was just a handful of us. And I knew that we needed to have a CRM, and because I knew Salesforce, we turned it on, and then I was like, we can get this set up. I'll start it from scratch. It will be great. And we actually ended up switching to HubSpot, which just has so many more point and click options. And when you only have 2 AEs and 1 CSM, it's pretty easy to, it does all the things that you need it to do. I've been very impressed. I think I have switched to the HubSpot side for now, but it's all about just making it as simple as possible. Like, big plus one, what you said. Yeah, sure, I can stand up Salesforce if I have an admin and all these things. Salesforce can do anything that you want it to, which is both a blessing and a curse. So if you just need to have a basic CRM and, it's connected to everything that you're doing in marketing as well, that's worked great for us. That's one of the exciting things about ChartMogul as well. It's like, let's simplify that even more. It just does not need to be as complicated as I think we try to make it sometimes. Going off of that, on the advice for people determining their tech stack, I think a good old spreadsheet rough draft is more than acceptable a lot of the times. And I think a lot of the times people are buying software, as Jonah was saying before, just to have the new shiny thing. You should always be answering some sort of problem or hypothesis that you have and trying to actually solve something and going back to like, why are we doing this? I get a lot of people asking me like, I just need to see the data. And I'm like, see what data? There's, we could cut the data anyway that you want, but let's kind of do a rough draft and see like, what are all the things that you think you need to track, and why are you tracking that? And it changes all the time, especially in a changing startup. So a good old spreadsheet, even for a week or two of just hammering it out of like, what do I actually care about? I think is a really, really important first step.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add real quickly to Dani's point that I think is really important is, how do you reduce the burden on your ops team? And something that I've run into in my career is when you are using so many different technology tools to streamline operations, there's so many different customer support tickets and phone numbers that you need to keep track of to call. Hey, 8x8, our phone system is not working. Hey, Salesforce, this is not working. And this is not an advertisement for HubSpot by any means. The laundry list of things that come with the CRM, right? Whether it's call and text, marketing automation, sequencing, chat, support, all of that's in one tool and one interface. It has dramatically reduced the burden on our ops team, and dramatically reduced the number of hours we spend on a monthly basis trying to troubleshoot through, integrations and in issues. But yeah, I think everyone's right. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that Salesforce has, but a lot of those bells and whistles, like we're a team of 25 on the sales and support side, and we don't need a lot of those bells and whistles. So just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like Graham listed off kind of like a laundry list of like various tools, right? And so, the ecosystem offers so many solutions to problem solve. And I think actually the feature parity with a lot of these technologies is what I would say is like almost a little same. And so one of the things that's been really interesting as we've just released ChartMogul CRM, which is designed for B2B SaaS businesses that are just getting started, is that I did something on the order of like 45 demos in 2 weeks. And I was surprised to see for the first time in my career that businesses are actually shifting off of Salesforce and HubSpot because they're like, I create leads, I work them through a process, I run a forecast, I close opportunities. And they can actually do this in a more cost-effective way, sometimes with competitive solutions like Pipedrive or Close. And so I think like maybe something we're all sort of saying here is that there's not necessarily a, this is the solution that everyone should go out and adopt. Of course, like if you're a steward of the business, it's maybe easier to stand behind a name like HubSpot or Salesforce, but there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, as they say. And I think that's increasingly true with how software businesses can build competitive products really fast, right? And so very good. Interesting. Shall I take us in the direction of ops? Jonah, you started to talk a little bit about your ops team. And so like, okay, if we think about a business transitioning from maybe founder-led sales to starting to scale a little bit, when do you layer on sales ops or revenue ops? How do you think about that decision? Does anybody want to take that question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely happy to jump in here. I'm obviously biased as an ops professional, but I think people hire ops way too late. And I think a big mistake folks make is trying to paste together lots of different people working on sort of like not only the sales tech stack, but also the process, like Jonah was talking about earlier. And it's really important to have somebody who sort of has a bird's eye view of how all of these things connect together. And once you start having different people in different silos, the data and the way things flow for the customer and things like that can get really messed up. So I don't know, the right number of like when it needs to happen is definitely debatable and depends on business, especially if, you're closing lots of deals, super high, super short sort of sales cycle. It could be a lot more simple. Like there's lots of different ways you can cut it, but I do think people tend to wait too late. And in my role, I've come in a lot of times and had to undo what, a few engineers and someone on, an ops team that was supposed to be doing like product ops or something like that had kind of like hacked together and didn't really know what was going on. So, I think if you are thinking, hey, I probably need an ops person, it's probably too late. That sounds so dark, but anticipating it is definitely a good call.
Graham, you're nodding along. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Like I see it both ways. I see lots of sort of things coming up around like, do you feel the pain first and then solve the problem that you're having? Or do you try and build something scalable that helps you, like, maybe it's a little bit of an investment, but sort of skips that pain, whether it be tech stack, whether it be hiring an ops person or whatever it is. I'm usually on the skip the pain part, don't feel the pain. But I will say that, like, in dealing with a lot of, like, successful entrepreneurs, they tend to have the feel the pain, solve the problem mentality. And, like, I want to be like, well, I have all this professional experience. I think it should be different. But I can't help but notice that a lot of really successful people they're like, move fast, feel pain, solve problem, feel pain, solve problem. Like, and just like repeat. And so I'm like, shouldn't we just build the scalable thing from the beginning and not have to like go through all this pain? Sure, yeah. If you have somebody on your team who has that experience and can execute that, build it, hire that person, like, whatever it is. And if not, like solve the problems that are right in front of you. Yeah, that's sort of my take. It seems that thematically the questions are sort of like the same in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I saw a SaaS talk about this topic, and I am embarrassed that I can't remember who said it, but like fundamentally the business only has two things to do, is like grow revenues, customer count, and like build product that generates money. And like ops is neither of those things. Right. And so like you could run the revenue and product development engines to a point where, to Dani's point, you've got to bring someone in to sort of undo some like commercial tech debt in order to like get to that next scaling portion. And it's like a little bit of a delicate balance. And I think from my point of view, it sort of depends on like, the ambitions and the pressures of the business, like how fast do you want to grow, and maybe the volumes and velocities of things. But like all webinar topics, there's never a one size fits answer solution here, right?
I do think that like Zapier goes a long way for some of these things. Like when we don't have the sales forces and the Marketos and things like that, and suddenly no code is becoming so prevalent that like, you know, like some of the things that like a marketing operations, product operations, sales operations are doing are sort of like rolled into other folks' roles. Sorry. Are brought into the role of somebody else. Like it kind of does make sense to just say run as fast as you can for as long as you can. And when that ops person comes in, they're going to have to undo some of the sort of like tech debt that's happening. But the cost of that tech debt with no code wasn't actually as much as it used to be. And so like, as we get more integrations focus, I like the like wait a little longer for sales operations and rely on people's autonomy of creating what they need for their to sell in their role for a little longer, as long as someone's keeping an eye on all of it. And then pretty soon, more and more people will start having more and more similar issues. And that's a sign to you that like, we need a sales ops person here that's going to sort of like solve a lot of these problems for everybody instead of relying on everybody to solve their own problems.
Yeah, I think something that I've noticed is a lot of early stage businesses, and we work with a lot of early stage businesses at Capchase. They start to say, okay, I need a VP of sales. I need to bring in 2 or 3 sales hires. And like, I'll always ask that question, similar to what Dani said before implementing a new software tool. But when you're going to hire more people, what metric are you trying to change? If it's to remove time from the founder, going from founder-led sales to a sales team, great. But the question I always ask is, what's your deal to logo conversion rate? What do you want that to be by bringing in a specialist? The amount of founders that do not know the answer to that question is startling. So it might be somewhat surprising hearing it from someone like myself with a sales background. I think you bring in someone that is sales ops or marketing ops, they graduate into RevOps, but at first it's all about working with sales to figure out what's my lead to deal conversion rate, what's my deal to logo conversion rate. Once you have those metrics, then you should bring in someone to specialize in sales or a VP of sales, because then you can say, you know, hey, Mr. or Mrs. VP of sales, our current deal to logo conversion rate is 40%. We're now bringing in a specialist. We need that to be 60%. And I think with the shift in tech from hiring 1 million people and throwing, you know, heads at problems to efficiency over growth at all costs, you need to have those metrics, and you need to have somebody in ops, in my opinion, to put those metrics and those benchmark metrics in place before you start hiring people in sales.
That's an interesting perspective. I really like what you said around having an ops person basically proactively identify something in your funnel to say, you know, like, this is the insight that unlocks the revenue growth. This is the, like, I think one sort of side effect from like sales or revenue operations coming out of like CRM administration is that this person was always like, this was me, right? Like I was a Salesforce administrator in my first revenue operations job, and I was just a service provider. The sales team would say, hey, go build this. Hey, the executive team, can I have a report that, you know, justifies this hypothesis? And I never had the opportunity to be proactive about surfacing like something that would, you know, meaningfully impact growth or retention. And I think like one thing that's really exciting about, you know, strong revenue operations leads now is they can say, I modeled out this pricing change. Here's how it's going to help us hit our ARR target faster. And this, I think, is like this proactivity and this like insightful analysis is kind of like my gold standard for like what revenue operations should look like. But I'm sure there's other things on your list too. Maybe you want to add on. What do you think? What do you think, Dani? Because like you have this operations background. How do you strike this balance between the must do operations things versus the like growth focused things? Maybe that's how I would try to phrase the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just what everyone is saying about going back to a hypothesis. Like, what are we actually trying to solve here? What number are we trying to hit, and work backwards from there? And yeah, in an early stage company like I work at, we are constantly sort of changing, taking a look at the market, seeing what's changing, seeing how we should adapt to it, particularly in 2023, where things are a little different than they used to be. So, one thing that I think people get kind of stuck in is we have a problem, let's buy a tool to fix it instantly. And then that's when, especially before you have an ops person, that's when you get this sort of like slew of tools. And before you know it, you're spending just as much money on the tools as you would have spent on an ops person who can think a bit more strategically about like, why are we buying these in the first place? What direction are we going to? What levers do we have to pull to, increase our ARR, decrease our deal cycle and things like that. So, yeah, I think that holistic view is really the piece that a lot of companies don't have, and that's where those people can be powerful.
Grand. Okay. So maybe the next question I have, because I think everyone here has been in a position of evaluating and purchasing technology, and so I'm curious, like, to get some different insights. What kind of is anyone here evaluating technology right now? Like, is anyone in a posture of purchasing anything? No.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that decision?
Yeah. We are very focused on making outbound work and make it a major driver for our business. We've been fortunate where, previous months we've had a healthy flow of inbounds, and now we want to be really focused with who we bring into the funnel. So the two categories of tools that we're looking into, one is, data enrichment. How can we arm our sales team with as much data points on potential prospects before they reach out? And then the other is leveraging AI to try to put together more personalized email templates. So essentially like ingesting all of that data on a specific contact or company and actually creating an email template that's personalized so the salesperson can go in, spend less time personalizing or composing that email and send it out. So overall, investing more in outbound through data enrichment and tools like a Lavender, which is an AI personalization tool to streamline some of the outreach. Because what we noticed was for outbound, our AEs and BDRs were spending 30 plus minutes composing an email or finding data points. And like best case scenario, you're having, 7 or 10 out of 100 people replying to an email. And it just didn't make sense from an ROI perspective. So data enrichment and then anything to help save the team time on personalization. Those are the kind of the two categories of tools that we're currently evaluating.
Cool. Can I ask a few follow-up questions?
Yeah, of course.
How do you think about how implementing those tools will move the needle? Like, I guess with reducing time to compose an email that converts, like, okay, directionally that makes sense, but like, how will you know if implementing something like these two categories of tools is a success?
Yeah, so the two metrics that we're looking at is, reply rate and then meeting booked rate. Those are the two top of funnel metrics that we're really focused on. To the point that you made before, we are looking at some leading indicators, right? We only have so many humans on the sales team. It's pretty cool. Within Lavender, they actually give you a metric that shows the average time spent per person composing an email. So that's another metric that we look at when evaluating the tool. Prior to using Lavender, the team was spending about 35 minutes, doing research and then composing a message. Now that is down to under 10 minutes. And there's a lot of room for improvement there where we feel we can get it down to 5. But, again, the high level metrics are, replies and meetings booked. And then we're looking at just like, how much time it spends on average to compose an email.
Interesting. So it's like very, very metrics focused, which I can appreciate from my ChartMogul seat. When you're thinking about working with a vendor, are there any other considerations you make? And maybe everybody can talk a little bit about this, but like, is there anything about, the size of the partner or the contracting process, anything that's like important when you think about evaluating the product and its ability to solve your need, beyond your requirements? That was originally for Jonah, but like anybody can chime in.
For me, I think a lot of times I am not the tip of the spear when it comes to like solving one of the company's biggest problems. I'm trying to like increase the number of champions that we sell to or something like that. And that's going to be really helpful. It's going to generate ARR, and it's not our biggest problem. And so for me, a lot of times flexibility on price to try this thing and prove it so that then I can like roll it out to the whole organization without the dollar amount being so high that I'm like almost like putting my reputation on the line to like implement it. Like, this better work, that type of a thing. And so like if I can come in and like, sign a $25K contract that, an example is like user gens. I purchased user gens for Segment. And so it's a software that helps you track championship, like when they leave. When a champion of yours leaves and goes to another company, you get an alert that's like, hey, one of the people who was the economic buyer of your software went to this company. They're not a customer. New opportunity? Like, what's going on? And so that's worked really well. That's worked really well for us. But I want that sort of like maybe 25K. I mean, if you're an earlier company, maybe even less. And that's why I love startup programs and if you're a startup, trying to get discounts for your size and things like that. But I just want them to make it accessible to me so that I can take that, show the results, show the proof to folks in the organization in order to validate the hypothesis that drove that thing anyway. And if it's worth its weight, the revenue for the vendor will come. We'll pay full price. If it's working, it's like just whatever it costs, because finding something that really truly works is hard to do. Yeah. So that's oftentimes my thing.
Yeah, fair enough. The agility to like get started and not sacrifice tons of political capital, like on a 24-month commit, that then you have like licenses sitting on the shelf, right? Like I've been there. Dani, what about you? Is there anything you really get excited about when you're like evaluating a potential vendor or project and you're like, wow, this is like, above and beyond, and I'm happy to spend money with these people?
Yeah, it's so crazy. Like, this is a big reason why Accord was started at the beginning too. The more your salesperson can help you through the process, I think the easier the whole thing goes. That sounds very straightforward, but I've been in so many processes where I'm like, how many more steps do we have? Like, who do I need to talk to next? You're ping-ponged around between people, and it makes it really hard to follow, like, as the buyer, what's going on. And there's been points in my career where I'm buying multiple pieces of software at one time. And if I'm having to go after you to be like, what's going, what is happening? Which is why, we kind of created this platform so people could collaborate on like what is going on, what are all the next steps. I think particularly in like enterprise or technical softwares or things that just take a long time. Like, we had deals at Stripe that took 18 months to close, and you might have the buyer or the seller kind of switch out in the middle of that. Like, people don't stay at companies that long. And so anyways, I think just the more like structured, the better. I'm an ops person. I love to like check things off of the to-do list. And if you can tell me like, these are all the things from the beginning that we need to answer or figure out on your end, like I will go do them. But if you give them to me piecemeal, then we're going to like lose the thread along the way. So I just think the salesperson is so important as the sort of like Sherpa along the way.
Interesting. I would have said like, yeah, I'm gonna like a good salesperson, but I would on my list was rate of innovation. I get really, really excited about a vendor who's got like a rate of innovation that just outstrips their competitors. But the vast majority of people aren't, they're buying your software for the first time, and you gotta coach them through that process, right? And know what to expect. So that makes sense. Grand. So I suppose we have just a few minutes left. Maybe I'll ask you one sort of like it's intended to be a controversial question. We'll see what our answers come up with. Like, what is a commonly held belief about scaling the tech stack? That you think is like, yeah, mostly baloney. Like, what's something that everyone says you should do that you have a hot take on or you disagree with? Anybody have something they would challenge founders or early stage businesses to think about differently?
I can start. I think back to like what we were chatting about before, just throwing a tool at every new problem is not the way to do it. I think lots of tools can do lots of different things. And if you have too many, then what Jonah was talking about before, which is the like pressure that puts on a team, regardless of if you have an ops team or not, of like things that break. And then you have all these different people maybe using part of the tools, but not all the tools. And you're just like spending way too much money in lots of different directions. Before 2023, I feel like every sales manager had a credit card and they were just like buying things left and right. I think it's really important to be like very thoughtful. I'm trying to practice what I preach a little bit at Accord right now. We are doing a lot more tracking on the CS side of things. And there's lots of amazing CS platforms out there, but we're in, the spreadsheet rough draft stage right now of like, what do we actually want to be tracking? And in our first cut yesterday, got rid of a few columns, and we're going to try it in HubSpot for a little while. And I know we're going to have to graduate off of that at some point, but I just think right now, while things are changing so much, it doesn't make sense to introduce like a brand new tool on top of it. So, yeah, don't buy things just to buy things, I would say.
Yeah, I would say you don't always need to go with the largest player in the space. The amount of times throughout my career that I was like, okay, well, ZoomInfo is the best in this category. Salesforce is the best in this category. I don't have the courage or risk tolerance to go with an earlier stage business. I think that's a major mistake, right? The amount of early stage SaaS businesses that have been built over the last couple of years with amazing founders who are willing to do whatever it takes to win your business. A couple of the early tools that I've signed up for recently, I spoke to like Lavender before on, automating the personalization, or another one called Momentum that helps create the actual email templates. These are both businesses that I don't think have been around for 6 or 9 months. And they have, bent over backwards to make sure that the tool set up properly. We're seeing ROI on the tool. So I would say, you don't always need to go with the biggest player in the space.
Plus one to that. Good partner, innovation. Yeah, I agree.
I guess I would say that, like I fall a little bit like more on the like solve your problem with tools side than the like don't solve your problem with tools. I feel like as a like earlier stage person historically, like putting a person in between you and how you're solving your problem like creates a lot of like meetings and communication that has to happen in order to get there. I'm like, just give me an API access to Airtable and get out of my way so that I can like solve all these problems, right? And then now it's like I'm in a like 6-person meeting, and like here's like RevOps and IT is a part of it, and here's an engineering manager because there's going to need to be an implementation. And I'm like, okay, there shouldn't be an implementation. Without me working at Segment, I've used Segment for a long time so that we don't need to implement anything. All of the events just go straight in, or, use whatever sort of like implementation tool you want. Okay, there's that. Okay, and so like piecing out all of the like people that need to be involved and eliminating their participation because we've solved that problem, to me is like shortening the number of steps, the number of people that you need in order to like buy it, in order to implement it, in order to like operationalize it. So that it's just like, I've literally attempted to buy something for a full year and then be like, you know what? Never mind. This is too much work. It's just too much work to try and buy it. It's like, we're talking budget, and then like all those budget things happen. And then after you agree on the budget, now you're in a meeting to talk about how to actually implement the budget allocations that you pre-agreed upon. And I'm just like, this is insane. From a startup perspective, this is insane. I'm like, you said yes, right? Give me a contract to sign so that okay, legal. Okay. You know what I mean? And so I'm just sort of like, get the people out of the process, streamline the process with software. And that's easier said than done. But like that, I would say, is the devil's advocate to the like, don't just buy a tool to solve your problem. And I agree. If you do that too much, you paint yourself into a corner of like, oh my gosh, our software costs are insane. And different teams don't even know about the other tools that are available. Sales is using Outreach.io, and then like marketing wants to do some sort of like cold outbound thing, and they bought their own tool to do it. And now you're just like, because they're like, we don't have any seats left on our plan. And you're just like, all this stuff. So that to me is the other end of that spectrum. Is there are become so many people involved, and streamlining that process of like buying a tool, implementing it, and getting the value out of it is like key. And I guess in a way that's controversial. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you don't need a sales ops person because you are an ops person at heart. If I had more people that were like, just give me access to the Airtable API and I'll figure it out, then we would be sitting pretty. It would,
I completely agree. And that actually points us to hiring. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, just write a SQL query. And they're like, I don't know SQL. I'm like, well, there's your problem right there. It's like, if you're at an early stage company, every person needs to be able to do everything. You know what I mean? It's like, and writing SQL, dealing with like Looker or, whatever analytics sort of suite that you're using, and getting the data out that you need, making a hypothesis. I don't expect that everybody's going to be able to do like price change projections. Like, oh, we think that we're going to have this penetration in this market. And, I don't expect everyone to be able to do that. But when an AE needs help making a Salesforce report, I'm like, this is literally your job, and this is just hearsay, not anything I've personally experienced.
Yeah, fair enough. Some of this like headcount over segmentation has like made us a bit lackadaisical in our like ops muscle. So maybe this we'll end the webinar on a call to action that is like just build the Zap. It's okay. Nothing. It's not problem. Well, this was really fun, and I'm grateful for you all to join. We normally end our webinars like spot on, and so I'm getting the cane from Catherine, but I think this turns into a recording and some content pieces with some really nice insights from Jonah and Dani and Graham. So I thank you all so much for your time and participation and experiences, and I just wish you all a pleasant rest of the day.